Hi, this is Little Dwarf playing games while rambling incoherently into a microphone. Why? Well, just because they can, and they continue with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, seeing how the game is ending, I'll wrap up the bestiary and characters and all of that reading, so there will be no actual gameplay in this episode. You can probably skip that. I'm doing it mostly for completionist's sake. The Dragon of Firestal. It's got scales, wings, claws. A dragon's a dragon. No point gabbing, just go kill it. Vagn, village elder of Firestal. Few truly know what a dragon looks like. For those who have seen one up close, rarely have the chance to share their impressions. That is why people are forever mistaking other monsters for dragons. That was the case in Firestal, where the so-called dragon wreaking havoc turned out to be a forktail. Yet this mistaken attribution did not mean there was no reason for worry. The forktail harassing Firestal was a particularly vile representative of its kind, one equipped with an endless store of deadly venom. Fighting it without first drinking a regenerative potion or a poison antidote would be tantamount to suicide. In his fight with the forktail, Geralt gave proof not only of his masterful swordsmanship, but also of a previously undemonstrated flair for shepherdry. With a little help from a brave sheep lent by the village elder, he lured the monster into a trap and then ended its life. Djinns. The pitcher emitted a puff of glowing red smoke. The smoke pulsated, then gathered into an irregular shape, floating in front of the poet's head. The first longing, a tale fantastic in all ways. A djinn is a powerful air spirit, a condensation of the power of the said element endowed with a consciousness and character, the latter usually nasty. According to legend, djinns can grant the most far-fetched wishes, though they do so begrudgingly. Usually powerful mages can capture and tame these beings. A mage who succeeds in doing so can then draw from the energy of such spirit, using it to cast spells without having to summon the power from traditional sources. Only a handful have ever managed this feat, however, for djinns fight to avoid such a fate with stubborn determination. To imprison a djinn and bend it to one's will, one must first weaken it, and that is no easy task. Fighting djinns is extraordinarily difficult. They can fling off spells in an instant that the most accomplished human mages could never master with years of preparation. What's more, by manipulating the element of air, they can summon gales, powerful storms, and even hurricanes. Luckily, as magic beings, they are vulnerable to silver, yet steel will do them no harm. Ice elementals. I thought to myself, what's a hunk of ice doing in the middle of some lab? And then that hunk of ice got up and broke my legs. Yannick Loft, burglar. An ice elemental is a mass of frozen water animated by magic. Deprived of consciousness or independent will, this elemental is boundlessly obedient to the orders of the mage who created it. Those orders usually contain only one syllable: kill. Terrazane. I do not believe in ghosts, it is that simple, but my men say that the house shakes at night, walls crumble, even floors move about. There's no such thing as a risk-free real estate investment. It might turn out your new home has a leaky roof, structural rot in the attic, a stretched floor in the living room, or elven ruins beneath its foundations, and within them an enormous elf elemental just waiting for a chance to break free of its chains. Fighting such a monster is no easy task. Its tough outer husk deflects all but the strongest blows. It can liquefy a man's bones with one crushing blow of its fists. Thus, one should never near it without first casting the Quen sign. One should have the Irden sign at the ready as well, whereas the other signs, Igni, Ard, and Axi, are completely ineffective against it. In the end, the Witcher triumphed over the powerful earth elemental, and in doing so won the gratitude of and the reward from Count Dissard. Melusine. I saw a shadow, great wings, like a passing cloud over the sky, and then I heard him scream. Brit of Svorlag. In the mountains near the village of Svorlag in Skellige lies an enormous complex of caves. For many centuries they were given wide birth on account of the bloodthirsty echidna known as Melusine, who had made them into her lair. Melusine was a beast so powerful that some islanders worshipped her as a semi-divine being. The Witcher, however, harbored no such delusions. He knew she was an extremely powerful monster, but a monster all the same. That meant she could be killed. To do so, she would need the highest quality of bolts, a solid silver blade, and a steady hand. Harisi. It attacked us, gods. I don't know what it were, but it were fast. It were at least 4 spans high. Velen peasant woman. Velen's woods and bogs brim with monsters. This fact is well known, and thus when war drove war refugees into the hostile land, certain of their number thought to avoid the danger of the lowlands by hiding in an abandoned mine. They were in for an unfortunate surprise. The shaft they chose for their sanctuary was inhabited by a poisonous Arahas, a merciless and bloodthirsty killer. The Witcher knew he was in for a tough fight. The Arahas has dwelt in the mine for years, and had grown large and particularly strong and resilient in that time. Like other members of its vile species, it would be dangerous both at close quarters and at distance. What's more, it was almost certainly venomous. He would need to imbibe Swallow or Gordon Oriole or both before attacking if he was to stand a chance of surviving. A small consolation, the Witcher knew that the monster would be vulnerable to his signs, especially Igni, Ard, and Irden, as well as to the Northern Wind Bomb. The Witcher arrived at the cave too late to save the refugees, but he could still avenge their fate. He slew the powerful Arahas and destroyed the eggs bearing its vile offspring. Abaya. Seen a lot of ugly critters in my life, morays, lampreys, blobfish, but nothing like this. Bjorg, Kaer the shipbuilder. The baby low Kaer had a pernicious reputation. At times fishermen who chose to cast their nest in its waters would never come home again. Something would drag the oarsmen off of longships or knock the ships themselves over. The locals blamed this on the sea devils, the Skelliger's name for drowners. The truth, however, proved much worse. A water hag had made her lair in the caves beneath the cliffs of Kierag, an old and experienced water hag with powerful claws able to demolish any attempt to block or parry, and the ability to blind opponents from a distance and strike with a lightning-quick counterattack. Signs would be needed to best her, Irden to slow her down, and Gwen to protect from her blows. Needed most of all, however, would be a great deal of luck. The Witcher, though, never was one to count on luck alone. Instead, he pulled a few tricks from his sleeve to even the odds. By masking his scent, he managed to catch the monster by surprise and slay it. Haugmen. Ye or anyone ever heard of a beast sitting in a wagon on a road, then waiting in an ambush? They are too plowing dumb for that, dammit. Egil, a warrior from Hindarsfjall. Your average necker is cowardly and weak, and only ever attacks in groups. Even then, only when the group greatly outnumbers its opponents. Yet at times there will appear among them a strong individual who towers over the rest of them in terms of strength, stamina, and cunning. Such neckers are usually called warriors, though the name is misleading. Warriors fight with honor face to face. These overgrown neckers act more like assassins. They strike by surprise from hiding in the back or when their opponent exposes himself while attacking. Luckily, the other necker warriors are vulnerable to signs, and their blows can easily be parried or countered. Such a monster lived near the village of Larvik on Hindarsfjall, and not even the strongest of islanders were capable of slaying it. A Witcher, though, a Witcher's another story. Ice Giant. Fled one time in my life from the Ice Giant, and you know what? I'm not a bit ashamed. Razmund Kavialke, Clan Torrador Horseman. This powerful primeval monster is quite possibly the last of its race. The Ice Giant resembles a man in many respects, but is blue as frost and taller than a tree. Though it seemed capable of reason, all attempts to communicate with it to date have ended in the same way, in a quick and painful death. Wamawam. Them's inwalk troll house. Troll say, out mans, but they Wamawam troll rocks, so troll wham too. Rock troll known as Wamawam. Rock trolls come across as dim-witted, ponderous and slow, stupid to be frank. It's easy to dismiss them, and even easier to enrage them. When this happens, it's best to run as fast as possible, for an angered rock troll is as deadly as a thundering landslide. The truth held in this case this truth held in the case of this massive troll known as Wamawam. His every blow struck like a battering ram, meaning one needed to either avoid them entirely or protect oneself with a Quensign. Its hard skin meant it was near invulnerable to sword strikes, especially those dealt from behind, where its rock armor was the thickest. The only hope lay in taking advantage of its typical troll slowness, especially if further exploited by the Irdensign. A certain set of Skelliger miners learned firsthand just how a dangerous rock troll can be. Ignoring all warning, they started to mine in a rich silver mine in a cave which Wamawam called home. They died soon thereafter, crushed or torn to rough bits. This time, a troll's killings were a justified act of self-defense. After all, the Witcher responded, every troll's cave is his castle. Kernun. We told the prick something lurked in them woods, but he refused to believe it. Louis Gloucester Woodcutter. Novigrad, the greatest metropolis in the known world, the acme of civilization, the material proof, or one is so tempted to think, of mankind's ability to tame and control nature, yet right outside the city walls lies the Novigrad wilderness, and whoever sets foot in it soon finds that man's primacy does not extend past the city walls. One of the monsters who made its lair in the thick tangle was an old powerful Leshen. It killed any who strayed into its territory with its species' characteristic cruelty, lacerating them with razor-sharp claws, sending strangling plants shooting out of the ground, or feeding them to packs of hungry wolves. If not for its vulnerability to fire, the Ignisign included, and the protection of the Quensign, one could wager not even the toughest Witcher would be able to slay the beast. Geralt of Rivia was only able to finally put an end to this lesson after a long and exhausting battle. Once the beast died, the way was clear for loggers to move into its former domain. The woods will now gradually fall to the axe. Perhaps one day they'll disappear altogether, and their monstrous denizens along with them. Morwood. Ate only entrails, fussy, Geralt of Rivia. Though Morwood killed the Skellige warriors without much trouble, it proved no match for the Witcher. It even tried to save its life by fleeing at some point, but it only delayed its inevitable death by the Witcher's silver blade. Hymns. Some men have got good reason to fear their own shadows. Svagermid, Unskellig Druid. Monsters most commonly claim innocents as their victims, tardy merchants, reckless children, and travelers who wander into dark woodlands out of misplaced curiosity. None of the above fear hymns, however. These rates only latch to those particularly despicable individuals who have committed some unspeakable crime. To all others, they remain completely invisible. When they do show themselves to the one they torment, they appear as a tall, shadow-clad humanoid silhouette with long, sharp claws. Yet hymns do not sink their claws into their victims. Instead, they sap their strength indirectly throughout inflicting suffering. Speaking in a voice that only their victim hears, they drive him into committing acts of violence, aggression, and self-harm. A hymn will seize a particularly guilty person's worst fears and weave out of them hideous visions, slowly driving the poor soul into madness. Those tormented by a hymn are incapable of restful sleep, for they are tormented by ever more frequent, incredibly realistic nightmares. At times, the victim will become extremely on edge, yelling pleas or threats at the invisible phantoms and confessing his guilt out loud in hope that this will end his torment. This act does not, however, bring any relief, for the hymn will not leave until it has addled its victim's wits completely or driven him to suicide. Penitent. I run back inside, hasp the door, and then I hear it. Someone whispering my name. Mikael. Mikael, Elderberg lighthouse keeper. It turned out that the monster hunting the Isle of Elderberg and its lighthouse was a rare type of a spectre known as a penitent, whereas this raid haunts immediately become enveloped in thick... Wherever this wraith haunts immediately becomes enveloped in thick fog and darkness, and those who wander into it usually never return. In order to defeat a penitent, one must remain in constant motion in order to avoid being struck by this agile creature, which can disappear and reappear in a blink of an eye to attack from behind. Most importantly of all, one must discover what keeps the monster bound to its hunting grounds and break the bond as soon as possible. With the lighthouse keepers for help, Geralt drove the mist from the isle, then dispatched the penitent from our world for good. Now ships will once again be able to sail to Arinbjorn's port, and the Witcher's coin pouch grew a little fuller. Okay, so that's all of the monsters. Now, there are small bits of lore on the descriptions of the waypoints, so I'll quickly run through those. Kermoren, the keep of the Sea of Yore, the home to the witchers of the Wolf School. Bastion. Once young witchers trained here, now the Bastion is a forgotten ruin. Iron Mine. Iron ore was once extracted from this place for the use in the Wolf School's forges. Lakeside Hut. A dozen years ago, a hermit lived in here who brewed excellent mead. The Witchers would visit him from time to time and chat about far-off lands. Ruined Watchtower. The Lakeside Watchtower was once the pride of the Wolf School Witchers, yet today it lies in ruins. The only sound the wind whistling past its stones. A royal palace in Vizima, one-time home of the kings of Temeria, currently occupied by Nilfgaard. Crane Cape. The lighthouse on Crane Cape for centuries lit the way for vessels seeking safe passage from Kovir and Povis into Novigrad port. Elector's Square. Square named after a group of reformers who enacted bold transformations that led the city's rapid growth, enriching its residents considerably and ushering the city's golden age. St. Gregory's Bridge. Bridge named after the hero of Novigrad, who saved the city from a horrible famine 300 years ago by sacrificing half his fortune to import food from Nazair. After that he was declared a saint, something even the jurors of the Church of the Eternal Fire were unable to change. Hierarch Square. Until quite recently, a great many mages lived near the Novigrad's main square. They fled when the witch hunters began their reign of terror, leaving many of the city's most beautiful townhouses abandoned and uncared for. Novigrad Docks. A den of dirt and depravity and the shadiest part of Novigrad. After dark, all one finds here are women of loose morals, hoodlums and drunk sailors. Oxenford Gate. In times when Novigrad and Oxenford were embroiled in a fierce neighborly disputes, this gate went through several completely different names, the Gate of Harlots and the Gate of Bloodsuckers being the two longer-lived examples. Its current name was chosen when this conflict was finally put to rest. Southern Gate. In truth, demarcating the eastern and not the southern portion of the city, the Southern Gate was given its inappropriate name by a one-time city planner who knew nothing about architecture and could not read a map, but had in his favor the fact that he was the mayor's cousin, and through lavish parties. Though confusingly incorrect, the name stuck, and now the city's residents never think twice about its illogical appellation. That's actually kind of funny. It must be hard to explain to tourists. Tretogor Gate. Gate erected with the funds from the Redanian royal family, who, wanting to earn a favor with the Novigrad merchants in the hierarch, dedicated a significant amount of coin to construction, as well as some no less valuable manpower in the form of woman power, in the form of a master architect Countess Anya Jaje-Pinkovitz and her skilled crew. Gate of the Hierarch. The gate is named in the honor of Novigrad's own son, the Hierarch of the Eternal Fire. Supposedly this name was given to it upon popular request, though no one can be found who remembers requesting any such thing. Portside Gate. Though not the most stately of gates, this one's location near the bustling port made it the calling card of the city. Glory Gate. Toughs and hooligans often end a night on drunken escapades under this gate, after being thrown out of the nearby taverns. Hunter's Cottage. The Buckhold Hills have long been famed for its wealth of animals dwelling here, which is why the owner of the nearby Saracen Grange once had a hunter's cottage built here to ensure the daily provision of fresh game. Yantra. The inhabitants of this village are known for their talkativeness and tendency to exaggerate, which makes them good companions for a round of a drink, but impossible to tolerate for longer stretches of time. Seven Cats Inn. This dank establishment is host to a shady clientele. Honeyfield Meadworks. The renowned Honeyfield Meadworks has for generations belonged to a respected family of halflings. Moldavi Residence. Despite its location and beautiful surroundings, this residence has been tossed from owner to owner like a hot potato, and for some unknown reason suffers a bad reputation. Isolated Hut. Rumors claim a famous painter lived in this house, though no one has ever seen him or knows his name. Alnes. Until recently, this was a thoroughly unremarkable village. Then the Vegelboots began organizing their famous horse races here, granting Alnes the enviable honor of hosting the region's most prestigious equestrian contest. Wheatfields. The fertile grounds of the Pontar Delta guarantee the inhabitants of Novigrad full granaries and full stomachs all the year long. Vegelboot Residence. A domicile of prestigious Novigrad family whose line can be traced back to the times when the first human settlers came onto these lands. Garin Estate. Some 240 years ago, a certain Yosen Garin arrived in these lands. A harky traveler, writer, brawler, and a souse, Garin looked around and saw the local meadows in bloom, cool shadows beneath charming glades, and glorious sun-bathed fields. All this inspired him to settle down for good. His new neighbors treated the arrival with suspicion, yet they changed their minds and warmed up to him once he turned a gracious host who would fill their cups once and again with the exquisite wines he had brought from his homeland. Brunwich. This picturesque little village makes a frequent subject of works by traders and by bards and poets. The best-known piece of action is set in Brunwich is The Betrothing, a farce penned by Stanisław Islas. The reputation that it gained made it a popular destination for bohemians from Oxenford who escape here during the hottest months to pass off time with contests for the most beautiful feathered cap and hunts for the golden horn held at night in the nearby woods. Upper Mill. The local community held a raising bee to construct a new brick upper mill to replace the old lower mill. Once finished, however, they decided a fully functional mill, that closing a fully functional mill just because there is a newer one nearby would be a sinful waste, and thus both remained in use. Draken Hollow Outpost. Defensive structure built during the reign of King Vizimir the Just in the 13th century, a time of intense Temerian-Redanian conflicts. In the relative calm that followed, it fell into disuse and then disrepair. Vic Watchtower. Legends claim that ages ago a famed mage Alzur had his laboratory in this Vic Watchtower. Arnskorne Castle ruins. In its glory days, the castle bustled with the hub of the Romiti family's activities. Today, it's merely a dangerous ruin in the heart of the cursed woods. A Temerian partisan hideout. Though the Nilfgaardians throughout Temeria though the Nilfgaardians thought Temeria died along with King Foltest, Temerian guerrillas still hide in the woods, prepared to give their lives for a moment's notice in their fight for independence. Estayar. Long before men first popped in these lands, a beautiful prospering elven city stood here, centered around the palace of King Maegler. One day, however, the city's inhabitants began mysteriously dying off in large numbers. According to legend, King Maegler sensed that he too would soon perish, and cast a powerful spell that caused the earth to swallow the city whole, so that no outsider would ever desecrate it. Centuries later, scholars from Oxenford Academy began painstaking excavations of King Maegler's palace in search of the causes of the catastrophe. Yet work came to a sudden halt when 3 subsequent expeditions ventured into the ruins' depths and were never heard from again. Herbalist's Hut. Home to a halfling herbalist who is a passionate devotee of innovative gathering methods and experimental herbal medicine. Heddle. The village of Heddle was once known first and foremost for its fine lace undergarments produced here. Heddle lingerie aroused such controversy, however, that the Novigrad hierarch personally forbade its production. That surely must have increased its popularity. Like, imagine the slogan: lingerie is so sexy, so sexy that the Pope himself declared it sinful, or whatever. Aramas's abandoned mansion. The peasants living nearby complain about the overwhelming cheese stench wafting out of this residence. Border Patrol. A small isle stuck in the river's current, an ideal place for bleaching cloth. Hindhold. This watchtower used to protect barges traveling from Oxenfurt and Novigrad. It once even boasted a bridge connecting the two sides of the river, but now it stands abandoned and neglected, its bridge a collapsed ruin. White Eagle Outpost. The grand name might seem ill-fitting for this place, but the troll that lives here, a Redanian patriot and a military aficionado, goes to great lengths to make his beloved King Radovid proud. Western Gate. Before the war broke out, several hundred people a day would pass through here. Now the Redanian blockade has slowed the traffic into a mere trickle. Novigrad Gate. During Oxenford Academy's exam sessions, this gate would be closed to spare the students from Novigrad's temptations. Oxenford Harbour. Oxenford's picturesque port has been featured the subject of numerous odes and ballads, the setting for at least 3 lurid crime novels, and a favorite spot for romantic outings in generations of students. Codger's Quarry. The now inactive quarry only employed stonebreakers over 30 years of age who would work hard all day, then spend the evenings racing down the sides of the quarry pit on handcrafted wagons. Hangman's Tree. During war, both sides committed acts of exorbitant cruelty meant to keep the conquered populaces in check. The Stonecutter settlement. Over 20 years ago, a certain Bartolomeo, known as Badger on account of certain characteristics aspect of his coiffure, discovered a rich deposit of high-quality stone on this spot. He bought the land for a song, then leased it back to the local peasants before heading off to Kovir, where he lives to this day, a life of a rich and powerful townsman. Mulberrydale, one of the oldest villagers in the region, owes its name to a certain uneducated botanist who could not discern one kind of a tree from another, so called them all mulberries. Devil's Pit. The inhabitants of Velen believe the expansive caverns underneath the Devil's Pit are home to demons. A ferry station. The ferry's former owners were famed for treating travelers who were forced to wait for better conditions to rambunctious and unforgettable evenings. Lindenvale, one of Velen's many impoverished villages, its poverty deepened by war levies and epidemic that spread after the Nilfgaardians' arrival. Lurch. Once the Eves family estate was located here, and the area bore the name of Lord Evis's wife, Mortilanza. When the couple died, their will stipulated that the land be turned to their serfs. The grateful peasants then founded a village of freeholders and named it after the first elderman, Lurch, who has previously served the Eves family as a butler. Wait, that's a reference to the Addams family, right? Lurch? It has to be. Especially because Morticia, yeah, kind of checks out. Toderas, village founded by King Griffin of Temeria, the husband of Clarissa of Toussaint. The king had planned to turn Toderas into a large, bustling university city, sort of a Temerian alternative to Oxenfurt, but as any visitor can quickly attest, his efforts failed utterly. A grotto. A dark and hostile place, which creaks from time to time with unsettling, throaty noises. Dragonslayer's Grotto. Underneath this fortress lies a musky-run cave, which a lost traveler will find nothing but a few fattened leeches, if he's lucky. Nevertheless, the village elders insist on repeating the legend that they gave the grotto its name, that of a legendary dragon slayer who's said to be buried somewhere deep inside. Reardon Manor, an abandoned estate of the once prominent Reardon family, relatives to the Lalouve dynasty. Bennek. The small village owes its name to the founding elder, who erected the largest windmill in the land on this spot, thereby providing work for all of the village's inhabitants. Downwarren. Before the war, the inhabitants of this village were known for their intricate lace-making and artisanal smithery. Ruined Tower. 5 centuries ago, King Geddes sent his most loyal knight, Martin of Oakendale, to watch over the inhabitants of his troubled land. He also sent his least loyal knight to scrub Martin's latrines. The orphans of Crookback Bog. Orphaned and unwanted children from nearby villages find a roof over their head and a bowl of warm food here. An ancient oak. Centuries ago, bloody rituals in honor of old gods were conducted here. Locals believe dark forces still haunt this place. Kimbold Way. Road built on the order of Baron Kimbold, meant as an act of safe escape route in case his plans to take power from after King Foltest's death went awry. House of Respite. The House of Respite's motto, "A soldier does not live on war alone." This is slightly misleading, however, for this club is not open to all soldiers, only Nilfgaardian officers or those who are capable of passing themselves as such. Nilfgaardian Group Army Center Camp. Pitched in mere 2 weeks, The Army Group Center Camp constitutes the quintessence of Nilfgaardian martial architecture. Marital architecture, that would be something else entirely. Crossroads. A small crossroads, well trodden by the inhabitants of the surrounding villages. A destroyed bastion built during the reign of King Gardic and destroyed during the First Nilfgaardian War. Road to Bald Mountain. The peasants of Velen believe that the summit of the Bald Mountain is home to witches, werebubs and wights. Olena's Grove. Legends claim that a beautiful nymph named Olena once lived in this grove. She fell in love with a young hunter, and the man swore to be true to the nymph, but later betrayed her. She decided to punish him by casting a spell on his spirit, which wanders the grove to this day. Frischlov. Like many other settlements in the area, this one has suffered greatly on the account of war. Its inhabitants have abandoned their property and evacuated lands in which they once dwelled in relative peace. Bywas. Most of this area's residents have fled north or died of the plague. In better times, they busied themselves making prize-winning breaks. Duan Hen, religious site where old gods are worshipped. Conidale. This village has been completely and utterly destroyed. Rumors claim that its inhabitants perished in a gruesome massacre. Fake Isle. Ruined tower which is said to be afflicted by a terrible curse. Bandits' Camp. A place some particularly nasty characters have decided to call home. Oreton. Village founded by Count Primislavus Donstessa, a distant cousin to King Foltest of Temeria. The Count was known for his passion for racing chariots, down winding forest paths and narrow country roads. The spectacle delighted onlookers, won the hearts of high-born ladies, and aroused hatred in his rivals. Refugees Camp. The members of this small community have erected a large winged statue, evidence that people are turning to old gods and ancient cults in this time of war and famine. Coast of Wrecks. Once the local youth would come here to revel among the wrecks, now the inhabitants of nearby villages have started combing the place day and night in search of anything that could be exchanged for food. Midcopse. Typical farming settlement, which the worst of the fighting has left untouched, but which famine now grasps all the same. One of the larger villages in the region. Wastrel Manor. This once beautiful manor house was located near here was known for its extravagant balls, which were attended by the cream of the local youth. Its owners abandoned it over a century ago, but soon afterwards it became a place of worship for the local community, which believes a deity dwells in here. Claywitch. Every year at Beltane, a great festival is held in Claywitch, accompanied by games, song and dice, and dance. On that night, the villagers from far and wide come to celebrate, with passing travelers welcome as well. Shortly before midnight, the youth in attendance race deep into the forest in search of a fern flower, and though no one has yet found one, many have found their other halves, or at least a night of moonlight passion. Boatmaker's Hut. Though nothing about this small domicile is particularly eye-catching, a family of the best shipwrights in Velen have lived here for generations, crafting the finest skiffs and dinges north of the Yaruga. Hangman's Alley. This road is lined with hanged bodies of peasants who opposed their new rulers or had the bad luck of happening across bandits who had nothing against adding another dangling installation to this boulevard's scenery. Blackbow. This village takes its name from the unwanted limbs loggers used to bring here to burn, leaving stacks of charred logs behind. The locals, however, prefer the old legend that holds the village was founded by a prominent member of an ancient race of tree people. Okay, that's interesting. Burned ruins. One of the many structures of the area which did not survive the onslaught of war. Crow's Perch. After Serad, the previous owner, panicked at the news of the armies that were approaching and fled to Fyke Isle, the castle became home to Philip Strenger, alias the Bloody Baron, along with his family and entourage. Castle Village, that's the same description. Volven Glade. A long time ago, when this land was ruled by forest spirits and ancient gods, the living would come here to pay their respects to the dead in the way their holy tome commanded. Walk thee in darkness on a path of blood, standing under a bare sky, naked before the gods and their messengers. Heatherton. The inhabitants of this village were relieved when they learned the path of the marching armies shifted slightly and passed their village by. Then one night they changed their mind. An abandoned tower. Legend has it that a beleaguered traveler once stood at the tower gate. He begged shelter for the night, claiming that he had been injured, but the baron living inside was afraid that the traveler might be a spy and sent him away. Little did he know that the traveler was a powerful mage who cast a curse on the tower, its inhospitable owner, and all who dwelt with him. Soon thereafter, the baron and all of his retinue died in mysterious circumstances, and the tower fell into ruins. Isolated shack. A small hut constructed by a famous sculptor who, having garnered every laurel possible for his trade, abandoned his Coviri residence and moved here in order to find inspiration in solitude and reflect on what to make with the rest of his life. Harpy feeding ground. One of those places entered only by the very brave or the very foolish. Lornorg. Years ago, smugglers would come here to load and unload their cargo. Lighthouse. Many years ago, a horrible accident took place here. A ship carrying the cousin of King Radovid IV the Bold wrecked against the rocks during a storm. The king ordered a lighthouse erected on the spot in order to warn other seafarers of its deadly danger. Logger's Hut. A lone cabin in the Novigrad forest, an ideal base for woodcutters. Lucian's Windmill. Lucien Le Fox, the famous Oxenford sculptor and architect, bought this windmill several years ago and made it into its country retreat. Sadly, the enormous popularity of great Lucian's designs means that he spends his little time in this fortress of solitude and has entrusted its care to a steward. Drahim Castle. In its glory years, this castle was home to the Redanian Moscovites of Sikat's dynasty, the patrons of arts and admirers of elven culture. After the death by suicide of the dynasty's last member, Prince Adrian, the castle fell into the hands of the Redanian crown and then into ruin. Canny of the Goose. This inn owes its name to the former owner, a swaggering, blustering fellow who wanted to attract those of similar temperament. Luckily, he died of liver poisoning after a few years, and the ownership passed to a distant relative who turned the Canny of the Goose into a best spot for stuffed goose liver in all of the region. Okay, so that's for Velen, and then there's Skellige. Skellige Isles. The Skellige archipelago is home to fierce warrior sailors whom continentals regard as pirates, and not without reason, for the isles are barren and their inhabitants' livelihood comes mainly from plundering the seas. The land on these 5 isles is divided between its clans, the heads of which are called Jarls. The Pali Gap Coast. Elders say that an isolated cave on this coast was once used as a retreat by the world's most famous bard, before the rise of Dandelion, that is, the great Zindea of Zangbebar, renowned from Nazair to the Dragon Mountains for his ferocious lute strumming. Caer al-Mult. Built centuries ago as a home keep for the kings of Skellige, in practice, however, each ruler preferred to keep his own clan's seat, and Caer al-Mulk was then left unused. Eventually, the decision was made to turn it into a prison, and today the fortress is a crumbling ruin. Marlin Coast. Until quite recently, this beach was frequented by fishermen coming to fish the marlins out of the nearby waters. Dorf Ruins, ruins of a village destroyed by the ice giant. Urskar. The villagers here were famous for their love of pickled herring. They ate it for breakfast, dinner, and supper, and even made jams and compotes out of it. Clan Toreador Forge. A famous forge where the best tools and weapons out of all of Skellige were once made. When the ice giant took over the isle, he turned it into his larder. Old Watchtower. The ruins of an old watchtower in which, according to legend, a crazed Koviri princess once locked herself up, convinced only a man able to free her from the tower would be fit to be her husband. No one even tried, however, and the priestess died of old age, and the tower fell into disrepair with the passage of time. Hov, a village known throughout Skellige for the famous arena which once hosted fierce fights between the mightiest of warriors. Svorlag. This village was founded by the mystical Sov, who killed a terrifying and bloodthirsty chimera on the spot. Harviken, home to Clan Dimun, and the location of where Holger Blackhand devised out the loot from every successful raid. Trondheim. This village was once famed across Skellige for the fact that it was inhabited exclusively by women, all their men having died during one raid or another. Larvik, the largest village on Hinzjarfjall and the home seat of Donar, the head of Clan Anhindar. Its inhabitants are just and God-fearing folk, traditionalists strident in their devotion to Freya. Lurten. Lurten's most famous inhabitant was Peter Pius, better known for the fact that he was able to drink an entire barrel of mead in one go and remain standing. Isolated hut. They say that it was once a home to an herbalist who came into the Isles from the continent. Unable to find a place in the nearby villages, she settled in this seaside hut, where she received an occasional visitor in need of magic or creams or bandages. Lofoten Cemetery. The inhabitants of Lofoten often visit this small cemetery to care for the graves of their loved ones and to ask Freya for blessings in the afterlife. Lofoten, once a rich and vibrant village, today Lofoten is ravaged and a crumbling ruin. Freya's Garden. A garden dedicated to the goddess Freya, once beautiful and filled with thousands of fragrant blooms and herbs, today it lays abandoned and untended. Bay of Winds. 3 generations ago, this bay was a popular meeting spot for the local youth. Then one night, a terrible storm broke out, and the sea poured into the beach, swallowing several merrymakers and dragging them out into a watery grave. Urella's Harbor. On the account of their mastery of their craft and painstaking attention to the detail, the shipwrights working in this harbor are considered the best in Skellige. Trail to Ingvar's Fang. This is the start of the mountain trail leading to Ingvar's Fang, the pride and glory of Skellige. Ingvar's Fang. The mountain peak was named after a mythical bear, which according to legend was defeated by Tyr, the heroic founder of Clan Tuiserach. Bridge to Kertrolde. This stone bridge was, according to legend, carved single-handedly by Grimjadjar, the heroic founder of Clan Ancrate. Kertrolde Harbor, one of the busiest ports in Skellige, goods from every corner of the world are brought here to be sold and traded. Rogne. This mountain settlement is home to the tough folk of indomitable spirit. Giant's Toes. In truth, simply a normal rock formation shaped by centuries of wind and water, islanders believe that Uroboros punished giants who oppose his will by turning them into those stones. Miners' Camp, small camp which local miners used as a base of operation for their gold prospecting expedition into the mountains in the north. Caer Galen, this old fort ruins attract the sort with whom one would not want to run into a dark alley. Whale Graveyard, this isle's inhabitants come here and gather bones which they use to build their huts. Gedinaith, an oak which is sacred to all Skelligers and is worshipped by both the druids and Freya's disciples. The isle's most important ceremonies are held here, including weddings and royal coronations. Crossroads, a fork in the road leading to Kertrolde. Ranavig, 15 years ago, one of the fishermen of Ranavig bagged an enormous halibut. And from that moment on, all the other villagers have devoted their lives to beating that record. Blandere, unusually for a Skellige village, Blandere is located inland, far from the shore. Its inhabitants scratch out a living through mining and shepherding. Druids' Camp, camp pitched by the druids investigating the magic cataclysm which devastated the nearby woods. Redgill, this village's inhabitants fled in panic when a mysterious magic cataclysm struck the surrounding area. Eldberg Lighthouse, a lighthouse built on the orders of Jarl Skordial in order to light the sea route to Arinbjorn. A village whose calm is only occasionally disturbed by someone slapping another senseless, or a comrade breaking out a bottle of mead over his mate's head. Sund, small village whose inhabitants are for the most part shepherds. Ferilund, this small village has gained great renown as the home to the best hunters in Skellige. Boxholm was once a thriving village, serving the nearby fortress Kernissen. Today nothing remains of the past glory but a pile of stones, some debris, and fading memories. Palisade. The remnants of this palisade once marked the border between the territories of Clan Drummond and Clan Ancrate. Distillery. A shroud of secrecy envelops this place. All that is known is that it produces the finest hooch in Skellige. Gorotto. An isolated off-locale that can only be reached by boat. Ruined Inn. A ruined and burned down tavern which once treated locals and travelers to best roast lamb around. Firesdal. Those living here are tough on the outside, but soft and tender within. Fornhalla, mysterious abandoned village. Holmstein's Port, piers and docks for the village of Holmstein, Clan Drummond's chief port. Caer Muire, this fortress has served as Clan Drummond's home for centuries. The days when it was new and in full repair are a distant memory now. Elverum Lighthouse. The former keepers of this lighthouse was a confirmed eccentric. In addition to caring for the lighthouse, he also wrote poetry and wove carpets, and was known to strip naked and run laps around the lighthouse, while shouting at the moon. What? The former keeper of this lighthouse was a confirmed eccentric. In addition to caring for the lighthouse, he also wrote poetry and wove carpets, and was known to strip naked and run laps around the lighthouse at noon while shouting, sound mind in a sound body, and for breakfast he would eat nothing but fish tails. Okay, so that's it. And then there's the character tab. Arnwald. After Gutlav, a trusted seneschal to the Uncried Jarls, passed away, a portion of his duties were taken over by the Jarl's cupbearer, Arnwald. This elderly Skelliger did not possess the far-reaching authority of his predecessor, but still had managed to make himself irreplaceable in his few years at the position. His purview included not only stocking the larders and cellars of Kertrolde, but also seeing to the needs of the keep's inhabitants, as well as the guests that visited during feasts and other important ceremonies. That is why his betrayal could not have come as a greater surprise. When caught, Arnwald confessed to his role in the murderous conspiracy, revealing his patron as well as his long-seething hatred for Clan Uncrate. Avallach. The being trapped within Uma's tortured husk turned out to be Avallach, a powerful sage of the Enel elves. Geralt had made an acquaintance of him years before. Already during prior encounters, Avallach had displayed an intense and frankly rather unnerving interest in the Elder Blood and its bearer Ciri. His exact motives were unclear at the time, and he made no particular effort to explain them to Geralt. Geralt likewise had no idea what bound Ciri and the elf now. There was no doubt that Avallach had helped her, had saved her numerous times from the Wild Hunt, but why? Alas, the sage, quivering on a razor's edge between life and death, offered no answers to Geralt's burning questions. He did, however, muster enough strength to utter a crucial piece of information, Ciri's location. When Geralt got a chance to talk to Ciri about Avallach, he learned that the sage had been her tutor and a mentor for some time. They were bound by a common enemy. Avallach had been the chief advisor for the previous ruler of the Enel, whose demise had precipitated a conflict between Avallach and the successor, Eredin. The sage had thus made it his mission to protect Ciri from the new king's malicious designs, whatever the cost. Ciri had made it clear to Geralt that she trusted the sage. He had saved her life on numerous occasions, including when, feeling the onset of the curse that would transform him into Uma, he resolved to hide her from the Wild Hunt on the Isle of Mists. Avallach played a key role in staving off the defeat during the defense of Kaer Morhen. After the battle, he advised the Witcher that ultimate victory over Eredin and his ghastly cavalcade would only be possible with magic assistance. That meant Geralt would have to once again pact with the members of the infamous Lodge of Sorceresses. Seizing the calm before the storm, Avallach had tried once more to teach Ciri to control her incredible talent. He soon found that Ciri was as stubborn a pupil as she was gifted, something that Geralt had discovered himself much earlier. Birna. It can be difficult for a woman to gain the esteem of knights and warriors, not accustomed to seeing female hands on the reins of power. It helps a little when, like Birna, the widow of King Bran of Skellige, the woman seeking power is filled with acrid disdain for her countrymen and their customs. One might argue that disdain is a valid reaction when, in the case of passing of a man whose power embodied tradition, those customs call on her to follow the long since outdated ritual and cast herself on her husband's funeral pyre. Justified or not, Birna's desire to rewrite age-old Skellige traditions put her at odds with the Jarls and made it unlikely that she would be remembered alongside Calante of Sintra or Meveor of Lyria as a successful and revered ruler. Birna likewise refused to hide her disgust with the custom of choosing the new ruler by the vote of the Jarls. She dreamed of establishing a hereditary monarchy in Skellige and thought that an ideal dynasty to hold was her own, starting with her and Bran's son, the young Svanrige. In all probability, it was this longing for power that drove Birna to concoct a conspiracy that ended in massacre at Kertrolde. The evidence gathered by Geralt and Ceres sealed Birna's fate. Blue Boy Lugos. Madman Lugos' sole child and heir was a dour, strapping lad who was nothing like his father. His nickname dated from the days of his childhood, when bruises often covered his body, supposedly from the rough and rowdy play that Skellige boys engage in, yet others suspected that they came from his father's belt, rod, or fists, for rumor had it that Lugas Senior did not wish to spoil his only child, and thus punished him harshly for any minor cock-up or grander failure. The events Geralt witnessed in the Cavern of Dreams confirmed rumors of Lugos' troubled relationship with his father. Blue Boy's greatest fear turned out to be the madman in his family tree. Blue Boy Lugos was one of the victims at the massacre that took place during the feast at Kertrolde. Later people claimed that he had knocked one of the beast's head off by clobbering it with a barrel of beer. True or not, this is how the Skalds will commemorate him in song to this day. Bran. King Bran, the former king of Skellige Isles, lived a long and storied life. When finally he felt decrepitude taking hold of him, he went into the woods to hunt a bear armed only with a knife, and thus ended his reign. It was remembered as an honorable and respected one, though some complained he preferred raiding to confronting the Isle's long-term problems, and that he let his wife's tongue wag too freely. Some connected two and two, claiming Bran has sailed out to fight overseas battles to put off dealing with the ones awaiting him closer to home. Carantir. This NL elf was one of Eredin's advisors, and also on account of his extraordinary abilities, an important officer of the Wild Hunt. Calling on arcane magic, Carantir would guide the riders of the hunt along mystic pathways through time and space in order to reach other worlds. He was also a master of the most immediate forms of transport, such as teleportation. He made ample use of during the attack of Kaer Morhen. Ceris Uncrate. While in Skellige, Geralt had finally had the chance to meet Ceris Uncrate, the younger of Krach's two children. Known as Sparrowhawk to her friends, she was as fierce and swift as the name would indicate. Ceris was an Islander through and through, and the spitting image of her father, having inherited all his courage, resolve, and stubbornness. Dauntlessly she sought to prove at every turn that there was no task she could not fulfill as well or better than any man in the Isles, including her older brother Hjalmar. Though Ceris's decision to stake a claim to Skellige's throne came as a shock to everyone else, she had thought it over quite thoroughly beforehand. Striving as always to outdo her brother, she intended to perform a great deed that would earn her widespread recognition and respect. That is why she sailed to Spikerog to free Jarl Udalric from the strange affliction that seemed to curse him. Ceris did what she set out to do. With the Witcher's help, she freed Clan Brokvar's leader from the wraith that had tormented him for years. Once again, the Sparrowhawk gave proof to her cunning, this time by unmasking Birna's plot and cleansing the shame from her clan's name after the infamous bloody banquet at Kertrolde. All these feats convinced the Skelligers that Ceris would be fit to be a queen. Though it was clear that it would take some time before the young ruler could step entirely out of her father and brother's shadow, the greater part of the islanders were pleased and proud with their choice of a ruler. Krach Uncrate. Skellige sagas brim with praise for war chiefs and warrior braves of ages past, yet the saga of Krach, Jarl of Clan Uncrate and Lord of Kertrolde, will outshine them all. It will sing of his strength, his courage, his wisdom, his generosity, his loyalty to friends, and his relentless pursuit of his foes. There will be few exaggerations in such a tale, for Krach, as the mightiest of Skellige's Jarls, truly did possess all of the traits of a hero. He aroused terror in his enemies. In fact, the Nilfgaardian mothers would use his name to frighten their children into obedience, and all in the Empire spoke in hushed tones of the infamous Tirth Ismire, the wild boar of the sea, who devastated coastal provinces during frequent and terrible raids. Geralt had known Krach for a long time, since a time when, as a young man, the Jarl had sought the hand of young Pavetta, Ciri's mother. After Bran's demise, Krach could easily have claimed the throne for himself, yet he preferred to support the claims of his son, Hjalmar. When his daughter Ceres announced her intention to seek the throne as well, the Jarl also gave her his support, showing no favoritism when it came to his children. To the islanders, honor is the most precious of virtues. Krach thus agreed without hesitation to live up to his pledge he made many years ago on behalf of himself and his entire clan, and supported the search for Cirilla with any means Skellige could offer. Donar Anhindar. Few Jarls of Skellige were as honored and obeyed as Donar Anhindar, the eldest of their number. Despite his advanced age, he remained the active leader of his clan, and its representative at all official gatherings. The only person able to break his composure was Madman Lugos, whose clan has long feuded with the Anhindars. Donar's home was, like Freya's temple on Hindarsfjall, as benefits a neighbor to the gods. Donar was famed for his wise, considered opinions and his piety. The last did not, however, extend to the gods of the continent, whose rich sanctuaries he often raided in his youth. Ermion. Most druids in Skellige differ from the deeply rooted continental stereotype of a grey-bearded old man in a white robe, bowing before sacred oaks, taming wyverns, and pestering local lords with petitions to add yet another species to the list of protected beasts. Ermion, Geralt's old acquaintance, was no exception in that regard. The stiff-bearded spindly man was the leader of the druid's circle in Skellige. He was also Jarl Krach Ancraid's advisor on matters magic and mystical, as well as on any and all issues requiring more refinement than a well-timed uppercut or a hard-swung axe. Ermion was known to be obstinate, and to have a tendency quite rare in Skellige to consider any and all possible consequences of a particular course of action before it was undertaken. All this meant that conversing with him demanded a considerable amount of time and patience. Given all of that, one can hardly be surprised at Yennefer and Geralt's rash and highly irresponsible actions regarding the magic anomaly, stealing a priceless artifact from the private chamber being the first among them, put Ermion quite out of his sorts. However, despite his difficult character and his somewhat testy relationship with Geralt, Ermion agreed at once to travel to Kermoren and defend Ciri from the Wild Hunt's forces. Fringilla Vigo. Emperor Emir had once presented the mages of Nilfgaard with a simple choice: either serve their country unquestioningly or die in prison. Fringilla Vigo, a mistress of magic holding office in the vassal duchy of Toussaint, refused both options and instead joined the infamous Lodge of Sorceresses, whose aim was to stand up to the dictates of kings and emperors. These bold ambitions were never fulfilled, however, and Fringilla Vigo lived in fear that her ties to the subversive organization would be discovered and she would meet a quick end at the hands of the Emperor's executioners. One must mention here that Geralt first met Fringilla at the Ducal Palace in Beauclair many years ago, when they were enjoying the hospitality of my one-time love, Duchess Anna Henrietta. The Witcher, always a sucker for sorceresses, conjoined with Madame Vigo during his time in quite a lively relationship that was surely no cause for joy for Triss or Yennefer. Fugas. The devil Fugas held a position of great prestige and responsibility during the Crone's Sabbath, that of a goon restricting access to the peak. He no way resembled Torque, the irritating but harmless Diabo Geralt and I had encountered many years prior. In size, Fugas resembled a somewhat overgrown troll, and he likewise displayed a troll's lack of subtlety. There was not a jot of mischievous puck or cunning verbal trickster about this devil. Instead, he did his job with commitment and professionalism of a Novigrad bouncer. Trying to stop Geralt, though, turned out to be the Fugas's dumbest and last idea, ending both his life and his flourishing career at the Crone's employ. Hjalborn. Young Hjalborn was the nephew of Holger Blackhand, the Jarl of Faroe, and one of the claimants to the Skellige's crown. Despite his young age, he had already managed to achieve some renown, both during raids overseas and while fighting the monsters dwelling in the dangerous regions of the archipelago. His deeds had earned him enough fame, name recognition and treasure that he stood a good chance of being elected king. Hjalborn's courage and bravery were not enough, however, to save him from the massacre at Kertrolde. Hjalmar Uncrate. The saying, like father like son, fits Krach and his firstborn son to a tittle. Young Hjalmar took after his father in both posture and character, and many predicted that in time he would overtake his elder in the honor and fame that he would gain. An extremely able, broad-shouldered swordsman, he had the makings of a superb warrior, and his charisma and tendency towards almost a mad bravura meant that he would stir the hearts of the loot and glory-craving youth from all of the Skellige's clans. All these traits made Hjalmar an obvious choice for the next king of Skellige. He thus did not hesitate to stake his claim when the time for this arrived, and immediately set off to Undvik to prove his heroism by battling the legendary ice giant. Hjalmar accomplished what he set out to do. Fighting side by side with the Witcher, he defeated the fierce Colossus of Undvik. Though his sister was chosen to be the ruler instead of him, Hjalmar did not bear a grudge, and decided to lend her reign all of his strength, an act that showed surprising political maturity. When discussing Hjalmar's heroic deeds, it surely must be mentioned that he did not hesitate to support Geralt by answering the call and defending Ciri at Kermoren. Hjort. It is my humble opinion that the most one can learn from staring at the innards of a gutted animal is whether the poor beast was infected with parasites. Nevertheless, Hjort, like many other druids of Skellige, placed a great deal of trust in both haruspicy and chiromancy, and oneiromancy as well, though that's more understandable, dreams being the royal root to one's soul. Word was that he commanded a great deal of respect and esteem among his fellow practitioners, having more than once accurately prophesied the future and interpreted the meaning of an obtuse dream. The druid was devoted to Clan Brokvar with all of his heart, and his knowledge and ability made him an excellent advisor, one in whom the Jarl of Spikarog, Uldarik of Clan Brokvar, placed a great deal of trust. Hjort had tried to alleviate the suffering brought by the Jarl's strange condition, but despite his efforts, no progress was made in stopping the decline in Uldarik's mental health. Holger Blackhand. This dour-faced Jarl of Faroe owed his nickname to the dark coloring of his hand and forearm, left there by a frostbite he suffered when his longship hit an underwater boulder during a freak autumn blizzard. Even judging by Skellige standards, where pillaging and plundering are practically rites of passage, Holger was considered a brutal pirate and raider. This opinion surely resulted from the fact that he attacked villages and ships of enemy Skellige clans with as much verve as he did coastal settlements of Sidaris, Novigrad and Nilfgaard. Madman Lugos. Though Madman Lugos, the Jarl of Clan Trumond, was nothing special in terms of size or strength, most men in the Isles still stepped aside when they saw him coming. Eternally feuding with his neighbors, Lugos had a reputation for a furious and violent temper, and managed to get into shouting matches with even the usually placid Donar Anhindar. Yet Lugos's biggest rival was Krach Ancrate, whom he accused of stealing a part of his domain, which in his reckoning encompassed all of Ardskellig. The clan's quarrel went back hundreds of years, and there was nothing to indicate it would end with those two fierce enemies. While those two fierce enemies lived, Lugos hated Krach with a passion dampened only by the laws of Skellige and the disproportionate balance of power between the two clans. Margarita Lowantil. The full list of Margarita Lowantil's outstanding mental, spiritual, and physical attributes would consume a mountain of parchment. Rita, as her friends called her, once held the position of a rector at the Aretuza Academy for Sorceresses on the Isle of Thanet, the same school attended by her famous ancestor, Ilona Lowantil. Though unusually for one of her profession, Margarita showed no interest in politics. It was only care for the good of her school that led her to join the Lodge of Sorceresses. Finally, her beauty deserves a mention as well. It was said that not even the marble likenesses of goddesses and nymphs chiseled out by the greatest sculptors could rival this sorceress's figure. Yet with all of her astuteness, Lowantil could not escape the same fate that so many of her fellows met. She had been arrested sometime before our tale begins, and was staying in the Oxermund prison, awaiting a summary and predetermined trial. Only Geralt and Yennefer's daring jailbreak saved Margarita from a certain execution. Othric Anhindar, Jarl Donar's grandson and heir, was the youngest of the claimants to Skellige's throne. He dreamed of the heroic deeds and daring raids that he would one day lead his subjects in accomplishing. Othric never got to live out those dreams, however. During the tragic feast that came to be known as the Bloody Banquet, or the Bloody Banquet, he lost his life when a furious bear tore his flesh to small pieces. Skjal. Ciri encountered plenty of liars, scoundrels, and villains along her path, but luckily happened on some decent folk as well. Certainly worthy of being counted among the latter was Skjal, a young warrior from Lofoten. Initially, he and his family tended to Ciri's wounds, nursed her back to health, and then helped her flee the wild hunt. In doing so, he sacrificed the thing that Skelligers hold dearest, his honor. Accused of cowardice, he was forced to perform a heroic deed to clear his name. Sadly, he failed. Mortally wounded by a beast in an abandoned garden, he suffered a slow, painful, and lonely death. Svanrige Tuiserach. A hard life awaits a child who cannot escape his parents' shadow. Following the death of his father, the beloved King Bran, Svanrige became the former ruler of Clan Tuiserach, which controlled vast territory on the Isle of Unskellig. Yet this quiet and mild-mannered young man seemed firmly tied to the apron strings of his mother, Birna, who sought out to control his every waking deed. With such an overbearing caretaker, it was hard to imagine Svanrige could ever grow into a man able to rule a mighty Skellige clan in his own right. Sheila de Tanserville. Geralt and I both know Sheila de Tanserville, the recluse of Kovir, the once proud member of the Lodge of Sorceresses, who in her day plotted, persuaded, and spellcast the world into a shape of her liking. Sheila always claimed she acted only out of concern for the good of magic and mankind, yet the blood of great many people stained her hands, including that of kings who stood in the way of her aims. She took part in countless conspiracies, and herself devised many intrigues, in which the Witcher often figured as an unwitting accomplice, obstacle, or an incidental victim. Thus Geralt's prior meetings with the sorceress were stormy at best. At one occasion, it could be said that Geralt saved Sheila's life, though this did not mean he felt very warmly about her. Be that as it may, the sight of the tortured and maimed sorceress in King Radovid's dungeon made the Witcher's cold heart swell with sorrow and sympathy. Perhaps it was these feelings, or perhaps it was simply a respect for a defeated former enemy, now suffering at the hands of cruel fanatics, that made Geralt take pity on her. Aware of what fate awaited her if she lived, Sheila de Tanserville was grateful to be given a dignified death, free from torment and humiliation. Now, this is, once again, wrong. She died in The Witcher 2. Man, the amount of bugs in this are kind of astounding. The Mad Castaway of Undvik. Geralt's encounter with the crazed man building an enormous ship while conversing with the cut-off heads of his former crew was, to say the least, an unusual experience. Though this strange shipbuilder was forced into his labors by the ice giant and his bloodthirsty sirens, it seems his work had become a kind of escape for his beleaguered mind. Surely that was why the unfortunate man showed such dedication to his dubiously worthy cause. In the end, Geralt had learned the true identity of the mad shipbuilder of Undvik. He was in fact Harald Houndsnout, a jarl who was thought to have been killed by the giant along with his crew. Though rumors about his death were clearly exaggerated, it was hard to say whether surviving had not proved the worst fate. News of the giant's death delighted the madman, but he rejected the witch's offer to take him back to Ardskellig. He could not live with the knowledge that he had failed as a leader of his clan, and thus was determined to build a ship to serve as a funeral pyre. Uldarig. Jarl Udalrik was an enigmatic figure, to say the least. Some mysterious ill surrounded him, causing others to shirk his company. Geralt could not help but notice that Udalrik did seem to be acting strangely, muttering to himself, and often showing signs of suppressed panic, as if he lived in constant fear of something or someone. Geralt's private talk with the Jarl confirmed his rumors. Udalrik was convinced that the gods spoke to him, sending him prophetic dreams and demands he make sacrifice. The tale of strife between Udalrik and his brother Aki over the family sword threw new light on the Jarl's mysterious problems. That the voices he heard demanded he injure himself suggested a vengeful spirit was involved. Udalrik's madness deepened ever more, finally prompting him to pluck out his own eye as payment for unspecified sins. In the end, Ceris's ingenuity freed Udalrik from the wraith that was tormenting him. With this, the Jarl could finally know peace. Uma. When Geralt encountered a misshapen midget at the Bloody Baron's court, he did not think much of it. Yet when he heard a similarly deformed being had washed up on Skellig's shores in the same boat in which Ciri and her mysterious companion sailed off shortly prior, he connected the two at once. It was clear that this rough-hewn hunk of flesh was the key to finding Cirilla. Sadly, there was no communicating with Uma. The gnarled twiglet lived in his own miniature world, yet Geralt knew Uma was the key to finding Ciri. Even if no pertinent information was forthcoming from the creature's stunted lips, surely further investigation would squeeze some solution out of this riddle. Though Yennefer and Vesemir agreed Uma was suffering from a powerful curse, they could not reach a consensus about how to go about lifting it. Sharp words were exchanged before Vesemir stepped in and announced that before Yennefer did anything, he would try one of the traditional Witcher methods. All that was left for the others was to wait. Though Vesemir's method had worked to disenchant the famous Swan of Povis, it brought no breakthrough here. Vesemir did, however, succeed in confirming that Uma's body was a sort of magic prison in which some other being was trapped. Yennefer's method did not prognosticate a high chance for Uma's survival, yet this was now the only remaining option for lifting the curse. The ritual succeeded beyond the wildest expectations. The person cursed inside Uma turned out to be none other than Avallach, a powerful elven sage the Witcher had met before. Vigi the Loon. Even for Skelligers, who value courage above all else, Vigi's fearlessness went above and beyond the pale of bravery, deep into the realm of suicidal madness. Clan Torredaroch warrior had strived to earn the right of being called Vigi the Unfearing. Instead, His actions earned him the nickname Viggy the Loon, and it seemed this outcome suited him just fine. It was Viggy who, craving glory and wanting to save his home isle from the ice giant, had convinced Hjalmar to brave the journey to Undvik. Many of their crew were killed during this expedition, but Viggy himself wound up a prisoner of the ice giant cave. Sadly, the cage had become his tomb and sepulchre, when the awakened giant crushed it with one blow, putting an abrupt end to Viggy's lunacy. Okay, so that's it. I will resume the gameplay and probably end the base game next time. That's all for this one, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!